What's happening, fishing friends? March is here, and that means spring will soon be in the air here in Iowa. And spring is an awesome time for bank anglers looking for bass. As the water warms up in the spring, the bass are going to start to move shallow, out from those deep winter haunts, up to those main points, and then back to the secondary points, and then at those staging areas. And when the water gets the correct degrees, 60-ish something degrees, the fish will start to spawn. What's great about that whole cycle is those bass are moving up shallow to feed. And when they're shallow, bank anglers don't need a boat to go out and find them. The fish are coming to you. Now, the important thing to remember is as those fish are feeding, it's so important to cover water. And that's the whole reason for today's video, my top 3 favorite spring search baits. Now, these are really the baits leading up to spawn. Once the fish start to spawn and post-spawn, I change them up. But hey, we're looking for some spring fish, so we're covering water. So the first bait on my list is a lipless crankbait. These are great because I'm chucking and winding, trying to cover water, trying to bang off as much stuff as I can. As you can see, the nose there is all messed up from rocks. Trying to bang it off rocks, swim it close to cover, pull it over the tops of any sort of vegetation that's already starting to grow. That's key with these. And I've learned that you can fish these faster than you would think in the spring. You know, that water's cold, coming from winter, you're thinking real slow. But as that water's warming up, you know, getting up into the 50s, the fish again are actively feeding, so they're looking to munch on some of these. So I'm tossing this baby out, reeling it in, giving it a pause, reeling it in, giving it a pause, or I'm trying to tick it over the tops of stuff, you know, get it stuck a little bit in vegetation and pop it free. Same thing if you're on a rock, you're coming over a rock, you get stuck a little bit, pop it over that. And oftentimes that pause or pop is what's going to trigger the strike. So how about brands? Well, the first one on my list is the old Bill Lewis rattle trap. These have been around for a long time. You can often find these on sale at Walmart. You can see this one's all old and chewed up. I'm actually running out of these. These were like the standard for such a long time. That's why a lot of people don't even call them a lipless crankbait. They'll just call them rattle traps. Whatever the brand is, they'll call them rattle trap. Well, really, that's just the Bill Lewis brand. So it just goes to show you that they've been around a long time. They're tried and tested. They work great. They come in, I think, like 90 some colors. So you've got a whole bunch of options to choose from. Second on my list is the Strike King Red Eye Shad. A lot of guys swear by this and they won't throw anything else besides this. These can get a little pricey. I know they have like the tungsten 2-tap, which costs a little bit more, but you know, has a different sound in it. They have the rattling. They've also got some of these in silent. So you can kind of pick and choose what you want. You can go silent if you want to be a little bit more natural, not as loud. Tungsten 2-tap, some guys just prefer that sound. And the Red Eye Shad comes in like 70 some colors, I think. Not all of them have the red eye, but they've got that shape that's pretty hard to miss. Number 3, and actually my favorite on the list, is the Cotton Cordell Spot. Nothing fancy about them. I think they come in maybe a dozen different colors is all, but they flat out work. I think regularly these are like $3.80 a piece. You can find them on sale for $1.50, $2 all day. And finding lures that are affordable are key as a bank angler, because I know a lot of people that are scared to get snagged. They spend all day trying not to get stuck and lose a lure instead of thinking about fish. And if you're fishing all day being safe, not really going into the thick brush or, you know, dragging a jig through the really heavy, you know, thick rocks, don't want to go in the real thick, cheesy grass, you're staying out of all those spots. Those are prime largemouth territory. So if you're scared of that and don't want to throw in it, you're not going to catch as many fish. If, for example, you had a $15 mega bass lipless that you're throwing out there, you're going to be scared to lose that thing, or you don't even fish it at all. So, you know, as a bank angler, you're going to lose lures. It's not like you have a boat and you can roll up to it and, you know, pop it free. So being able to stock up on some affordable options is key. Now, when it comes to colors, I keep it simple. The shad pattern has been my favorite around here. Shad, or this kind of sexy shad with chartreuse, for kind of my normal everyday waters, or when it gets a little bit dirtier. Now I will go to a chrome or gold when it's sunnier out, you know, especially in that clearer water. You don't want them to see a bunch of crazy colors. You just want them to see that flash going back and forth. So chrome or gold is good. Gold I'll usually go to when it's dirtier water, but still sunny out. And last on the list is red. Red is supposed to kill it in early spring. I was not a huge believer of it. Last year I threw the red lipless and smoked them on these. So needless to say, I will definitely be throwing more red this year. It works. Lastly, size. I keep it real simple with size. I'll go to a smaller little 1/4 ounce in the beginning of the year. You know, the shad are usually smaller. Or if I'm fishing really shallow, it's easier to keep a 1/4 ounce up out of the, you know, thick wood and stuff. I'll go up to a 1/2 ounce when the bait that they're eating is a little bit bigger, or if I'm fishing deeper water. 1/2 ounce gets down quicker. The second bait on the list is the old spinnerbait. Man, and this goes back as one of my confidence baits for as long as I can remember. These really seem to be a lure that folks love or hate. There's just not a lot of in between with the spinnerbait. It's easy to cover water with. You're chucking it, you know, winding it in, and it's mimicking a school of bait fish. It's got the flashing blades, it's got the skirt, everything that fish want in spring. Now, a drawback to the spinnerbait is that it does have a lot going on with it. You know, the flashing, spinning, vibrating blades, big skirt, you know, a little bit larger profile for some people. So It's not a slick, calm, bluebird day lure. You need a little bit of wind to break up the water. A little bit of cloud cover is great, just so they're not getting a great look at it. They're just seeing flash and something that looks like a bait fish, and they got to react. So when it comes to brands, the first was back in the day. This was the only thing I threw. I swore by it. They were good enough for Hank Parker, so they were good enough for me. Luckily, I still have a few of these left over. Pretty cool. I'm not going to tell you what the brand is. I want you to guess it. If you know what this is, leave a comment below. You might be able to tell from the eyes, or they even released this cool spinnerbait back in the day, kind of like an early vibrating blade type deal. Pretty interesting. My second favorite is a brand that's also been around a while, but still pretty darn cool, the War Eagle spinnerbait. They have a pretty small, compact profile that come in some really good colors, and they've been very effective for me over the years. I've been able to find some pretty good deals for these along the way, so again, very important as a bank angler. You don't want to be spending a ton of money and afraid to fish it. My third favorite brand, and probably the most used as of recent years, are the Strike King spinnerbaits. This happens to be the tour grade spinnerbait. It comes with a little bit longer skirt and back to kind of hide that trailer hook right there, and the trailer hook does come stock on it. These are pretty nice. They've got, the reflective side and the painted side of the blade, so it's kind of like a whole one package, throw it all ready to go. Now these tour grade spinnerbaits do not come with a bait keeper, so if you like throwing a trailer on there, because they already come standard with that trailer hook and no bait keeper, I'd go to something different. Now when it comes to colors, white or kind of that shad, different color white is usually my go-to where I start. If the water gets really dirty, I'll move over to a chartreuse, which helps stand out a little better, or kind of that shad chartreuse, just something that's a little bit brighter that's going to get their attention. Now when it comes to blades, man, I could do a whole separate video on blades, but I've honestly kept it pretty simple. I've actually liked these stock ones that come on these tour grade that have a reflective side and a painted side. I've liked that because the water I fish here is not super clear, but it's not completely muddy. It's kind of that in between, and these have worked well for me. Most of the time, I honestly find myself throwing the willow blades or the willow and then the one smaller Colorado up front. I don't do a ton of experimenting with them, but the willow blades have always done well for me. But if you fish a lot of really muddy water, I would certainly recommend checking out Alex Rudd's video. He goes over this, and of course, muddy water, a lot of guys will go to that big Colorado blade for a lot of thump, versus a willow blade, but he brings up some really cool points. I would highly, highly recommend checking out his video because he specifically talks about spinnerbaits in muddy water and brings up some really interesting points that I found cool. Dude's got a ton of knowledge. I highly recommend checking his channel out. And finally, a clear translucent color. Now, as you can see, the skirt's real clear, very natural looking. I might even make this blade a little bit smaller this size if I was fishing real clear water. Honestly, I haven't fished spinnerbaits a ton in real clear water, but I do have some of those options. Usually I find myself throwing a swim jig like that, but don't count the spinnerbait out. A smaller spinnerbait, a little bit natural looking, will still work great in clear water. My third and final favorite search bait is the paddle tail swim bait. Man, when those fish are moving up and trying to feed on bait fish, it's hard to do a better job at imitating bait than a little swimming paddle tail. I remember fishing little tiny swimming paddle tails like this back in the day when I was a kid in the spring. Man, and they would just kill it. And good luck finding this little zebra pattern. These babies are old school. When it comes to swimming paddle tails nowadays, for sure my first favorite brand on the list has to be a Kitech. Probably one of the most well-known brands around. They come in a bunch of different shapes and sizes, and they are flat out fish catchers. I love these little tiny 2.8-inch Kitech in the spring, when the bait's a little bit smaller. Put these on a little darter head, something like that guy right there. One of those with a little 2.8-inch and you can kill it, a little finesse swim bait. Now you can also move up to a little 3.8-inch Kitech like this on a little swim bait head with an open hook. Man, a couple years ago, this was the deal, 20-some fish days on these, an afternoon. Crazy, it's a ton of fun. My second favorite brand is the Strike King Rage Swimmer. These are great because Walmart carries them. You can often find them on sale, a little 3.75-inch like this or a 4.75-inch. These things are money, and they're very similar to the Kitech Fat Impact, so they're fish catchers. Number 3, if you watch my channel, it's probably no surprise that the Beast Coast Miyagi is number 3 on the list. These baits have really impressed me. Put a little 6/0 belly-weighted hook on here, and you're in business. Speaking of rigging, how do I rig these up? Well, the belly-weighted hook just like this is great because it's totally weedless. Take that hook, kind of text pose it in there so it's in the flesh, and you're not getting stuck on anything. You can swim this through wood, you can bounce it over rocks, it comes through vegetation. Awesome for bank anglers because, again, you don't have a boat to troll over and pop your bait free. You don't want to be retying and losing baits every third cast. These belly-weighted hooks come in all different shapes and sizes. They even have the belly-weighted hooks with the underspin on the bottom of it. Usually a 1/4 ounce if I'm fishing really shallow, otherwise kind of 3/8 is my all-purpose size. But if you're not fishing in a bunch of cover, you can go with an open exposed hook like this, a little swim bait hook, or a little underspin like that. Both are great when you're not fishing around a bunch of cover. That open hook usually is going to lead to a better hookup ratio too. And when it comes to colors, you know, kind of in the dirtier water, I'll go to a white or a shad pattern like that. Something with some bright color that's going to stand out, and that bright white also stands out real well. If it gets really muddy, you can also dip the tail in some chartreuse. That bright color helps it stand out. I also like something with some blades to give it a little bit of thump. If I'm in really clear water, I'll go to something very natural. This is an electric shad, almost see-through, or something like this, these little rainbow shad, real finessey, but real see-through, very, very natural colors. Lastly, for my guys that are fishing smaller lakes and ponds, when you know your bass are feeding on bluegill, the bluegill pattern is hard to beat. This is the Dope Gill from Beast Coast. Super, super cool color. Mimics a bluegill extremely well, so bluegill color for your ponds and lakes. So that does it. The lipless crankbait, the spinnerbait, and the paddle tail swim bait are my top 3 favorite spring search baits, but I want to hear all of yours. So please leave me a comment below and let me know what your top 3 favorite search baits are in the spring. I know jerkbait is high up there for a bunch of people, and I do fish that a lot. I tend to fish these more, that's why I didn't make my top 3, but man, when that water is really cold, you know, under 50 degrees, that pop, pop, pause of a jerkbait is absolutely deadly. Some guys prefer a swim jig, some guys like a chatterbait in the spring, all sorts of options. That's why I want to hear from all of you. Comment below and let me know. But it's late, I need to get to bed. I certainly appreciate every one of you that watch, so till next time,